My sister gave gifts to every family member but me. But the part that really broke me? She smiled when she did it, like she knew I'd still show up anyway. My name's Julia Patterson. I'm 35, I work in finance, and I live about 3 hours from the house I grew up in. I've never missed a birthday, a wedding, or a funeral, even the ones I wasn't really invited to. I've always shown up, not because I had to, but because I thought that's what family did. So when I got the invitation to Dad's 70th birthday celebration, handwritten by my sister Tessa and mailed to me like I was a distant cousin, I already knew where I stood. Still, I RSVP'd yes. I arrived at the old house a little after noon. The backyard was decorated like something out of a magazine. Fairy lights, rental chairs, a drink station, and one of those balloon arches that spelled 70 strong. Tessa always went big. That's her thing. She's the fun one, the successful one, the one who knows how to make a party look perfect on Instagram. I stood at the edge of the yard for a moment, holding the small wooden frame I'd brought as a gift. Inside was an old family photo, our last picnic before Mom passed. I'd spent weeks restoring it. New glass, handmade backing, gold trim, sentimental, sure, but heartfelt. Tessa spotted me from across the yard. She was in full hostess mode, white jumpsuit, clipboard, flawless makeup. She offered a wave, not a hug, not a "you made it," just a wave, and then she turned to fix the tablecloths. That was fine. I didn't expect more. At least Dad smiled when I said hello. He looked tired, older than I remembered, but he gave my shoulder a squeeze and said, "You came." "I always do," I said. And I meant it. My seat was at the far end of the garden, behind the speaker setup. I recognized most of the guests, aunts, uncles, cousins, I hadn't spoken to in years. Nobody really asked how I'd been. One uncle made a comment about how quiet I always was. I smiled like I always do. As people mingled and music played, I stayed near the photo table, watched people laugh, sip champagne, pose for Tessa's camera crew. I wasn't bitter. Not yet. But a small part of me, the part that still believed maybe this time would be different, held on to hope. Because no matter how many times I've been overlooked, I always think someone might finally see me. I didn't know then that the person who would wasn't Tessa, and wasn't even alive. Lunch was winding down. The chicken was cold, the wine was warm, and everyone was settling into that lazy lull that comes right before speeches. I was still holding on to the picture frame I'd brought, not sure where to put it. There was no gift table, no one had asked for it, so I tucked it under my chair. Tessa stood near the microphone, chatting with a cousin from out of town. She laughed loud, touched his arm, looked around like she was hosting a gala, not a birthday. I watched her hug our Uncle Brian with both arms and kiss his cheek. She hadn't even hugged Dad yet. When the music faded, Tessa tapped the mic and smiled. "Before we move on to cake," she said, "there's something special I want to do. I prepared a little something for the people who made Dad's journey so amazing." A few people clapped. I sat back in my chair. A long table had been wheeled to the front. Boxes stacked in neat rows, each one tied with red ribbon. Names written in cursive gold. Tessa picked one up. "For Uncle Brian," she read. "For the wisdom you gave Dad through all those tough years." She handed him the box and kissed his cheek again. He grinned, everyone clapped. Next, Aunt Lisa, then our cousins, Dad's old fishing buddies, our neighbor who used to mow the lawn. All of them, one by one, were called up. Laughter, claps, hugs. I kept thinking, maybe she's going in reverse order. Maybe I'm just later in the list. I looked around. My name wasn't on any of the boxes. My heart sank, but not in a dramatic way. It was quiet. A sinking that I was already familiar with. Tessa held up a necklace, gold chain, small heart-shaped pendant. "For Mom," she said, placing it around our stepmother's neck. Because behind every strong man is a stronger woman. More applause, more smiles. Tessa beamed like she'd just solved world peace. Then she clapped her hands once. "And that concludes the gifting." No mention of me, no mistake, just done. One of our distant aunts leaned over and asked, "Did you already get yours earlier?" I shook my head. "Nope." "Oh, maybe it got lost?" I smiled. "Yeah, maybe." I felt my cheeks burning, but I didn't move. I didn't storm off. I didn't cry, because when you've been left out enough times, you stop asking why. If you're still reading this far, maybe you know what I mean. Maybe you've been in a room full of people who smiled at everyone but you. Maybe you've told yourself, it's fine, even when it clearly wasn't. I told myself that too. Then I looked at Tessa. She caught my eye for half a second and smiled. Not apologetica. Not apologetically, not sheepishly, just that tight, satisfied smile she always gave me. Like she'd won, like she knew I wouldn't fight back. And she wasn't wrong, at least, not yet. The clapping faded. People started rising from their chairs, stretching, refilling their wine. Conversations picked back up like nothing had happened, like nothing had just been said, or unsaid. I stood slowly, grabbing my purse, slipping the picture frame inside. I didn't make eye contact with anyone, not Tessa, not Dad, not even the aunt who asked if my gift got lost. I took the side path through the garden, the one that cuts behind the old rose bushes Mom used to trim. I hadn't walked that way in years, but my feet knew the route by heart. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just needed air. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The porch still had that loose board on the second step, the one Dad always promised to fix. I stepped over it, unlocked the side door, and slipped inside. It was quiet, almost too quiet for a house full of guests. I walked down the hallway past old photos. There used to be one of me in my high school cap and gown. It wasn't there anymore. Tessa's wedding photo had taken its place. Figures. In the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed, letting the weight of everything press down. Not heavy, but constant, like humidity, like something that doesn't knock you over, but never lets you breathe fully either. I told myself, don't take it personally. It's what I've told myself for years. But that day, it landed differently. I had shown up, again, and again, and again, hoping maybe this time they'd remember I exist. Maybe this time my presence would mean something. Maybe love, when offered long enough, would finally be returned. But it hadn't been. Not really. I pulled out my phone, stared at the home screen. A message from a coworker blinked. "Hope the party's going okay." I almost replied, "It's fine." But I didn't. Because it wasn't fine. And maybe it was okay to admit that, even just to myself. I stood, wiped the corners of my eyes, and headed back through the hallway. The laughter outside had gotten louder. I could hear Tessa's voice over the mic again, announcing cake. Someone had brought out champagne. I reached for the door handle, paused, and in that pause, I heard it. The microphone clicked. A throat cleared, and then Dad's voice, rough but steady. "Before we move on, I want to read something." I froze. The door stayed closed. And I stayed right where I was. Not walking away, not walking back, just listening. The silence outside didn't sound like a party anymore. I inched the door open just enough to see. Dad stood near the microphone, holding a piece of paper, creased, slightly yellowed at the edges. His hands weren't shaking, but something in his shoulders looked heavier than usual. Tessa stood beside him, lips parted like she'd been mid-sentence before he took over. Her arms were crossed now, tight and defensive. She wasn't smiling. "I know this wasn't part of the plan," Dad began, "but before we bring out the cake, I need to honor a promise." The crowd murmured, chairs shifted. Someone at the back said, "What's going on?" Dad cleared his throat. "A long time ago, your mother wrote me a letter. She gave it to me the week before she passed, told me to keep it safe until a day like this." He unfolded the paper slowly, reverently, the way someone might hold a photo of someone they'd lost. "I wasn't sure I'd ever read it aloud," he said, "but today made it clear. I have to." And then he started reading. "If you're reading this, it means Julia's been left out again. Maybe by accident. Maybe not. But if she's standing quietly in the corner, smiling like she always does, pretending it doesn't hurt, please remind her that I saw her. Every time." My breath caught. "Tell her I remember how she cleaned the kitchen without being asked. How she gave up senior prom to babysit when I was too tired. How she visited me every week when the treatments got bad, even when Tessa couldn't bear to look." Tessa's face turned pale. "Give her this letter when the world forgets her, when the family forgets her, because I never did, And I need her to know there's a part of this house that is and always will be hers. Dad reached into his pocket and pulled out a smaller envelope. "This," he said, "is the deed to the garden plot out back. Your mother had it transferred to Julia years ago." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. Tessa opened her mouth, but Dad cut her off. "Not today," he said, voice low but firm. "This isn't a debate. This is what your mother wanted." My feet moved before I realized it. I stepped out from the doorway, into the sunlight, my heart pounding. People turned. Some looked surprised. A few looked ashamed. Dad held the envelope toward me. "Come get what's always been yours." I walked forward, every step heavy, like moving through water. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. When I reached him, he didn't say anything else, just placed the envelope in my hand and gave me a nod. A few people clapped. Not many, but enough. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. I hadn't even opened it yet, but my hands trembled like it held the weight of something much bigger than paper. Tessa stood frozen near the drink table, her mouth pressed into a thin, angry line. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her silence said it all. No one moved to defend her. Not this time. Dad stepped away from the mic. He didn't look at me, not right away. He just walked to the edge of the deck, stood there like he was trying to catch his breath. Maybe it was emotion, or maybe just age, but the way his shoulders dropped, it felt like a release. I sat back down, this time at a table closer to the front. No one told me to move. A few cousins gave awkward smiles. One of my aunts reached out to pat my hand, then pulled back like she wasn't sure if she had the right. I didn't mind. I wasn't angry. I was just tired. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to hide that. When the cake finally came out, the energy felt different. The laughs were softer, the chatter quieter. People were still enjoying themselves, but the air had shifted, like the story of the day had rewritten itself. Tessa handed out plates like nothing had happened. Her smile had returned, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She didn't look at me again. I didn't go out of my way to make her. I wasn't interested in a scene. I wasn't there to win. I was there because I'd always shown up. That hadn't changed. What changed was that, for once, someone else showed up for me. After most of the guests left, Dad found me near the photo table. He held the picture frame I'd brought, the one I thought no one noticed. "I remember this day," he said quietly. "Your mom laughed so hard that afternoon she snorted iced tea through her nose." I smiled. "She hated that picture." "She kept it in her dresser drawer," he said. "I think that's why." He handed it back to me. "Put it in the garden room when you're ready. It'll be yours now." It hit me then what the letter, the deed, the silence had really meant. I hadn't been given a piece of land. I'd been given a place, a piece of this family that I didn't have to earn, a space where I wasn't just tolerated, but remembered. And maybe if you've ever been the quiet one in your family, the helper, the peacemaker, the forgotten one, you'll understand what that means. Not everything needs to be loud to be real. Sometimes, the most powerful moments come with no announcement at all. Just a garden, a letter, and the echo of a mother's voice saying, "I saw you. I still do." A week after the party, I drove back to the house. Not for another celebration, not for anyone's approval, just for the garden. I parked by the side gate and let myself in with the old key Dad had left in the mailbox. It still stuck a little, like it always did. The fence creaked, the grass was overgrown, but the corner lot behind the shed, the one with the uneven stone path and the rusted wind chime, was still there. It hadn't changed, but something in me had. I stepped onto the patchy soil and just stood there. Let the silence sink in. Let it feel real. The garden wasn't big. It probably wasn't worth much in money. But it held something I hadn't felt in years. Permission to exist without explanation. I set the picture frame on the windowsill of the garden shed, the same frame I almost left behind. The photo of Mom, still laughing through iced tea. I pulled off my shoes and stepped onto the earth. I didn't bring tools. I didn't have a plan, just my hands. And the memory of the lavender we once planted there, me with a plastic trowel, Mom with a sun hat too big for her face. I started pulling weeds with my fingers. The sun was warm on my back. My palms stung. It felt right. After about an hour, Dad showed up. He didn't say much, just handed me a small box of seed packets. "Your mother bought these years ago," he said. "She kept thinking one day you'd come back and use them." My throat tightened. I nodded. Looks like she was right. We worked in silence. Not awkward, just familiar. He stayed for a while, then left me alone. I spent the rest of the afternoon planting in crooked rows. It didn't look like much yet, but I could already picture it, the way it might look next season, or the one after that. That night, back in my apartment, I sat by the window and watched the streetlights blink on. I didn't check social media. I didn't answer Tessa's texts, though I saw she'd sent a one-liner. "Hope you liked Mom's little surprise." No apology, no warmth. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I needed either, because the apology I'd been waiting for wasn't hers to give. Mom had already said it, with a deed, with a letter, with a truth no one could take back. If you've ever had to carve out your own place in a family that didn't save one for you, if you've ever stayed kind when no one noticed, then maybe this story feels familiar. You don't have to prove yourself to people who need reminders to love you. The right ones don't forget. They plant gardens for you, even when you're not there to see it bloom, and sometimes they leave the gate unlocked.